Halloween, a time of thrills, chills, and spills, and also about monsters. Yes, my friends, I'm back again, and this time we're talking about monsters again. In the world of video games, cinema, or even novels, monsters come in all shapes and sizes, and in the time I've talked about this topic, countless games have come out, each with their own blend of monsters. And so today, we'll be taking some time to dive into topics of what I believe make an effective monster, especially in the world of video games and cinema. I'm Manga Kamen, and...
Monsters. Guess after this, there'll be one less to worry about.
Before we can even really get into what makes an effective monster, we need to set our terms and qualifiers, because when you look at a monster, you get something as iconic as Nemesis that... No, not that one. Much better. Or you can be referring to something like... Monster is a nebulous term. Hell, it could even be a disturbed man who has a thing for hands.
It gave me a rock-hard penis!
Which is fair, because when you look at a monster, it's often defined as a creature that deviates from the normal shape, behavior, or character. But I think it's important to really understand that a monster is different for everyone, much like how something can be scary for one person or just look goofy to another. I think one part of the best ways to determine the key elements of a monster comes down to three parts. Design, because you need to have effective monster design in order to make it memorable and scary, as well as what they're designed to do. Integration, where the monster needs to fit, or rather not fit into the world depending on what you're going for. And exposure, which honestly might be one of the more important elements of what a monster is, because it's important to have the right amount of said monster in your story. And what's that spell, my friends?
I don't know, Common. Shouldn't there be like another category? I think limiting them to just 3 seems kind of lame. For what? Just so you can have an acronym?
Fine! We'll add threat level to that list of traits. Happy?
Not really, that just means more work for me.
To some people, that might be even scarier. But yeah, now that we established diet, let's get into it. When it comes to design of a monster, you need to consider quite a few factors. What the role of the monster is, what you're trying to accomplish, and the environment that the monster is in. Let's consider probably the most famous example of a monster, especially in the last few years, Mr. X. I mean, with Resident Evil 9 Requiem coming out very soon next year, I figured we might as well tackle one of the titles that really brought the series back to proper horror. And a lot of that isn't part of Mr. X. When you look at his design, it's honestly pretty tame. It's effectively a stone-faced guy in a coat and fedora that can be knocked off, and he'll actively try to kick your ass for it because you exposed his baldness. It's simple when we first meet him, but I think that's what makes it effective, especially considering that most of the other enemies in the game that you meet are zombified people. So Mr. X stands out from a physical design perspective. Of course, when you actually encounter him, there's another outstanding element to his design, and that's game design. And that he'll follow you through almost every room, and the rooms he can enter are safe rooms. Well, most of the time, so it makes the guy stand out, and as the game goes on, he becomes more monstrous. At least if you're playing a certain character's path for the remake. Because when you look at the design of a monster, you need to consider the world it's a part of and how you want to implement it. Mr. X starts out a fair bit bigger than your average person. While he does have all the human elements to him, it's just the game that really does a great job of making him monstrous and rather iconic for a time. And while this version of him wasn't the initial chaser for the franchise, he quickly became an iconic one. And Resident Evil has been playing with chasers for a long time. Hell, look at Lady D!
Shit! Like I'd let you get away.
She does have a lot of the similar elements to Mr. X, mostly with a human appearance with exaggerated features that are dangerous. But I wouldn't exactly call her scary as a monster. If anything, the fact that she has that attractive side to her kind of messes with the scare factor. At least to me. I mean, most of the internet want her to sit on people. I mean, she's starting to spit in the world to make it clear, but the design gives me mixed signals. I'll see about getting more into that when we get to integration, but there's a logic behind the design of these two monsters. And before we move on to Resident Evil, I know I've been really critical of the RE3 remake Nemesis design in the past. Hell, I outright made a video about how I despise how they treated Nemesis in that game, and I'll probably go into more about the character when it comes to the exposure section, but I just want to say that maybe I was too harsh. That honestly generic garbage bag outfit, that twisted nose that looks so friggin' stupid. Nah, I can't do this. The design sucks and I still love the original Nemesis more. But since we're on this subject of childhood things being corrupted, that's honestly a pretty good common design motif that you see in a lot of games, especially nowadays, and in mascot horror. Five Nights at Freddy's, Poppy Playtime, Bendy and Ink Machine, Indigo Park, and several others. It's not a bad design philosophy when you really look at it. It follows the idea of taking something innocent or normal and twisting it to become a monster. However, aside from the withering and damaged parts with FNAF's animatronics, a lot of the time this corruption leads to things like making the monster elongate or taller, giving them sharp teeth or claws, or with some, they don't really change at all. Hello, neighbor! I mean, to me, when I have an animal version of Molly Macaw running after me, I don't really see design being the reason why I'm scared. It's more to the point of the scary music startup and I need to run, otherwise I'll have to do this section again. It's why I have a bit of an issue with mascot horror, cause from a thematic standpoint, I like it. But from a monster and horror standpoint, I don't really find a lot of the creatures to be scary. Don't get me started on Garten the Bonbon. God, it's like looking at Play-Doh. And when Poppy Playtime does a better dough monster, it at least has symbolic meaning to its design, even if I don't find Doughy to be scary, even when he transforms. Oh, that actually leads into the trend of designing monsters that is as old as time itself. The monster grows, or has a much more dynamic and demonic figure. It's a trope that happens so much when it comes to monster designs. Hell, a few of the monsters I brought up in this section do it themselves. Lady D, Nemesis, hell, even Doughy from Poppy Playtime does it. It's when the monsters grow larger and larger, almost as if Rita Repulsa decided to go freelance to gaming companies and help them design monsters. It's not bad design. Hell, giant monsters are a staple of television, cinema, and video games. Because when something is so big, it's looming over you, it can step on you or see you as a snack, well, that's concerning at the very least. The problem is that when this happens, the monster will lose definition and change from what it initially was, which, for more human-based monsters, it can be effective. Like, look at William Birkin. His transformation is a lot more steady throughout your encounters with him, both in the original and remake, where he starts out as a corrupted human with very exaggerated parts of him that is obviously breaking the human aesthetic of the character. Hell, even in the original, we watch as he mutates gradually, we see his humanity slowly being sapped away in the process. At one point, his head gets absorbed into his chest, with the monster's head becoming more prominent. Yeah, it's dated all hell in that cutscene, but there's something bone-chilling about watching the design evolve, becoming more horrific and growing larger with every encounter. And this also translated pretty well into the remake of RE2. Though my only complaint with that one is because of the new angle, we don't get a great look at the transformations of Birkin. And that's also an issue with the bigger transformations of designs. Sometimes there's this disconnect where we don't see the full transformation, which when it comes to games, I can understand to a degree since, you know, not only can it be expensive to animate stuff like this, but can also be difficult to transform some creatures into more monstrous forms and have it make sense. It's a complaint that I'm more understanding of, but it's one that makes me laugh when I know the reason for some scenes and why they're done the way they are.
Okay.
Who knew debris would be enough to make the horror monster evolve to its next stage of evolution? There must have been a leaf stone in there. I understand to a degree that it'd be a tall order to see the transformation of monsters from a monetary standpoint, but the visceral imagery of a monster becoming something else, or a human becoming a monster, just adds a lot more to the design than we see become its final form, because there's a through line it allows people to see from A to Z, at least to me. And a lot of this won't matter unless the monsters have proper integration in the world. This is where the design of the world really comes into play with how I feel with monsters. Let's face it, environments are a key factor of how effective your monster is as well as what's around it. That can include things like the setting, the characters, and even if there are other monsters. I brought up in the last section, Mr. X stands out greatly because he's a stark contrast to the undead monsters of Resident Evil 2. That's a good example of implementation since it allows the monster to stand out more. But moving away from that, let's consider probably one of my favorite movie monsters of all time. The Thing from Another World. And I have to make that distinction because there's probably going to be one smart aleck in the comments who thinks I'm talking about this guy.
Don't do drugs.
No, instead we're talking about the classic movie monster, The Thing. An alien being that has the ability to basically assimilate any living tissue and take it over, using that living creature as a disguise. It's a horrifying concept, essentially the horror of the doppelganger, where anyone could be the Thing and you don't know how it can affect other people. That concept in and of itself is terrifying. Imagine if a creature like that was real and got into something like a major city. It'd be able to take over the entire world in no time and most people wouldn't even be aware of it until it was too late. In that setting, it's a terrifying concept, but it doesn't really lend a lot of suspense and such. So when you look at the original film, it takes place in an Arctic research facility with a small cast of people. The halls are cramped, the outside world is a hostile winter wasteland that can even freeze the Thing into an alien popsicle. So you have an alien creature that can take over people, and both the monster and people are trapped with each other in an area. The creature trying to infect everyone so it can escape, and the people trying to figure out who the monster is and who's the real person, and they can kill it. It's a great suspenseful integration of the concept, which put both the monster and the people on the defensive to a degree. Granted, even a concept like that, it can have some issues depending on the execution.
They're idiots. 2, they can't control any aspect of their lives. They have to be led around like fucking sheep. I mean, Collins? Hey, Collins, you okay? What the hell is he doing? Is he river dancing? I think he might be infected with the Thing. Collins, I'm gonna give you this little test here. Just try and hold still, okay, buddy? Huh. I guess you're okay. You're just kind of freaking out on me here. Come on, Collins. Collins? No, what? Oh, bullshit! I tested him! Just seconds ago, he was fine!
I guess the Thing is actually Irish. That would explain a few things like how MacReady survived. The Thing was looking out for his fellow Irishmen. Point is, with a claustrophobic element of environment, it adds to the suspenseful nature and threat of killing the Thing, since the cast can't escape. Not only because of the snow and cold would kill them, but there's also the chance that one of them could be infected. It's why when we look to a lot of horror games, they'll often keep you secluded to a single location. A location that can be pretty big, mind you, on the inside, but if the characters or players can escape the area or the monster, well, the threat is pretty much done. I mean, if you could just walk out of Silent Hill without experiencing anything, well, it kind of loses its edge, as well as all the monsters in there. There are plenty of monsters, though, that will chase people out into the world or find ways to get them. I mean, there are a ton of horror movie monsters that do just that. Freddy Krueger, The Blob, the Death Angels in A Quiet Place, you get the idea. Oh wait, didn't that get a horror game not too long ago? It was mediocre to me. Back on topic, the thing is, when it comes to monsters, the integration in the world is key. The monsters are supposed to be a glitch in the system, and they shouldn't belong in our world. They're an anomaly, but that doesn't mean they can't be the singularity. Consider Soma, where most of the monsters, a combination of machines and goopy nightmare fuel that will keep people quote-unquote alive, sometimes driving them insane or turning them into mindless beasts that will chase you to the sea, well, they're all part of what you call the WoW.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Can I even call the WoW a monster? F it, it's my video, I'll say it is. The integration of the WoW was a fascinating one. It's an artificial intelligence, a biologically engineered computer system that uses a substance of structure gel to spread its form across the underwater research facility Pathos 2. it effectively integrated itself into the environment, becoming a part of the world, and while being a threat to any living creature, it doesn't exactly fit in our world. Its own abilities allow it to essentially become the world, though. Now, we're talking about a lot of intrication how the monster shouldn't really be a part of the world, and for the most part, that's something I stick to. Zombies are pretty common as monsters go, and on an individual basis, they're not that interesting or even a threat. Mainly because when you look at a zombie material, they really become a lot more dangerous when they're in groups and will overrun the world. And sometimes, zombies will break their traditional forms. A lot of those that can stand out, too. Left 4 Dead's infected zombies have a lot of different types that make them stand out from the norm. Spitters, smokers, witches, for example, and they still have common infected, which can help elevate those special types to be higher. Maybe it's just me, but when all the zombies have the ability to run, it's not that entertaining or interesting, because it doesn't make them unique. It just makes me want to put them back in the grave. To me, your monsters need to stand out from the world to some degree, or they have to make the world their own. And even then, on an individual basis, I find individual monsters to be all the more interesting. Maybe it's just me. Sometimes when there's a massive amount of monsters in the world that are of the same variety, and we find their one weakness, it just loses that oomph and scare factor. In 2019, there was a movie called The Silence, where the monsters in it were a ton of ancient bat-like creatures called the Vesps, that attack anyone and everything if they make a sound. Kinda like the Death Angels in A Quiet Place. But then we learn that they're so stupid that they'll fly into a wood chipper, and makes me wonder why no one thought to set those up in the streets. Apparently, these things were able to defeat the military. How did no one see that these things fly into fans, helicopter blades, airplane turbines? You see how one scene can raise too many questions about these monsters, and how they are so stupid they'll kill themselves? It just makes me wonder how incompetent Hollywood thinks humanity is. Which, it's Hollywood, I don't blame them for that at all. But one thing to note is that when we're more exposed to something, the less threatening it is, too. Which leads to... Let me start this section off with a question. Are you afraid of the dark? No, we're not talking about that show. Let me rephrase that. Have you ever been afraid of the dark before? It's a standard fear that at one point pretty much everyone experienced. Probably when you're younger. But even when you're older, a dark alleyway is enough to send a chill down your spine on the right night. And that's because of the aspects of horror. A core feature of fear is the fear of the unknown. What could be lurking in those shadows? What monsters lie in wait? Only the shadow knows! The same can be said for monsters in fiction. Some of the best monsters often keep to the shadows, hiding from your sight until the last moment when they strike. I'll use The Thing from Another World again, as both a good and a bad example. In the original movie, the reason why The Thing is such a major threat is because of the fact that we don't really have a lot of experience with the monster. Most of the time, it will lie in wait, biding its time for the perfect chance to infect someone. It's hiding in someone else's skin, and every time it shows up, it's a big and scary event. Like when the medical scene when the doc is about to use the defibrillators to resuscitate someone, the Thing's stomach opens up and bites his hands off. It's gruesome and extremely impactful because of the unpredictability of the Thing, contrast to the more recent prequel. Now, I and a lot of others have a few issues with it, such as the use of CGI instead of practical effects like the original, and how everyone in that movie seems to be an idiot, including the Thing, who seems to think it's an appropriate choice just to appear in front of anyone who is even a little bit suspicious of him, revealing itself at any chance. Gone is the tension, gone is the mystery. Video games have a similar issue, especially with horror games, and that's due to the fact that most things are rarely scary more than once, if at all really. But when you get jump scared to death a la FNAF style, very rarely will it stay scary consistently. This is due to the exposure effect. The more and more we as humans get exposed to something, the more familiar we get to it. It's kind of a weakness of the horror genre, and why ads for certain movies or games act a bit of a kneecap for horror, since they pretty much spoil a lot of the plot and or the monster itself. Back to the games, when you die in a video game, you don't die in real life. I know that's kind of a no-duh common moment, but it needs to be said for when you die in a game, games would recycle you back to your last save, or checkpoint. And you'll have to do everything again. And there's always the chance that you'll die and have to do it again and again. Insert Hollow Knight Silksong's BioWater here! Fear gives way to frustration, and that can definitely affect your perception on the monsters in the game. One of the best examples would be the Outlast series. Sure, most of the monsters in that game are insane humans. Little pig. But due to the linearity of the game, it hurts the gruesome encounters, since if you keep dying to Chris or Traeger, you're going to eventually become frustrated more than scared of them. And it's not a problem only with Outlast, but with any horror game really. Whether it be games where you can't fight the monsters, or if you can fight them. Not too long ago, Silent Hill F came out, and while I'm a little mixed on the game myself, one thing that holds back the gruesome monsters in my opinion is the game's combat. Now, I like a good combat system in any game. Hell, one of my favorite games of all time is Metal Gear Rising. I'm fucking invincible! But combat in horror games needs to really strike that right balance of being workable, but doesn't make the player feel like they're in revengeance mode. Earlier Silent Hill titles weren't perfect with their combat, but around the second and third I felt there was a decent way of having limited combat that can at least work and not make the players get frustrated too badly. Though I would imagine that this is more or less tied to the next topic. Monsters need to be a threat. I mean, if you could just punch them out like the local booze hound at the neighborhood pub, it isn't conducive to making an effective and scary monster. And if you say, have your monster just waiting outside a shop with obvious broken glass and flimsy doors.
Oh. Hey, bud! Hey! You looking at the toys, buddy? You waiting patiently? I appreciate that. I really, really appreciate that. I appreciated that a lot. You don't understand what that means to me, that you are so patient with me. All right, cool. Let's play. Game on!
I think that says more than what I need to. I mean, say it's an issue of game design all you want. I'm still not going to take this version of Nemesis seriously. Effectively with that nose, too. Which, let's keep this version of Nemesis. Did you know he never actually kills any of the STARS members on screen? We're just told that there's...
But right now it's got a hard-on for the only two STARS left in town. You and me.
Why did you say that like it was a completely normal sentence?
And the strength of the guy is really inconsistent. We're shown that he can bust through walls in his first appearance, but a door blocked by a bookshelf? Oh, perish the thought! There are several times where Nemesis has Jill dead to rights here in the game, like this part. You literally have her head in your hand. Crush that melon, man! But nah, he just tosses her to the side. Like, I get it, gameplay-wise, that'd be stupid, but it seriously kneecaps this imposing monster that can't even pull the trigger on his flamethrower either when he has Jill right in front of him. You're supposed to be a killing machine. Actually kill something! Contrast with the original Nemesis, where we see him actually killing Brad outright. At the very least, it establishes Nemesis as a threat immediately and shows that he doesn't play with his food. Someone actually made a fan version of this for the remake. And I feel a small addition like this would go a long way to at least make the new Nemesis not be a joke. Now, watch. All the RE3 remake Nemesis simps will come crawling into the comments section claiming I'm wrong to feel that way. And yeah, much like how I said stuff like with Silent Hill F, a combat system can lower the level of threat of the monsters, despite them looking gruesome and intimidating. I don't know, when I suddenly develop a Fox version of Nero's Devilbringer in a horror game, I'm not really thinking, oh, I'm scared! It's more like, when can I do this cool thing? But with that said, you're probably thinking that I prefer the other option with horror games, where you have to run from the monsters, and you can only do that. You're not a fighter! You need to run! You don't know me. I've never been a fan of, you can only run and hide, especially since it makes no sense. Back to the actual point, you need to establish your monster's threat level, and you need to do it early. FNAF's Secret of the Mimic does an actual good job of this because of its ability to basically swap between the animatronic costumes that the Mimic can basically become anything at any time. And you won't be able to immediately tell if it's there or not. It's the same monster, yeah, but it has a different skin every time it appears. And because of that, it's able to be a constant threat, taking the idea of the doppelganger and placing it like this. Or, and this technically isn't a horror game, but Metroid Dread. I mean, it's got the atmosphere of a horror game, but it's awesome. The Emmy are what I think makes some really good horror monsters, even if they're just robots. Each of them had this oddity to them, like you'll see them crawling on the walls, racing towards you, ready to take your bio DNA. And the fact they can't be damaged with the exception of the Omega Blaster, and even then it's not a one and done thing. You really need to work for it to properly blast their faceplates off first. But what's good about them in a horror sense is that they are an established threat, and one that keeps evolving through each encounter you have with each individual one. So despite the fact they're essentially palette swaps, they each can be scary in their own right since they have their own unique abilities. What I'm saying is, they're a real threat, and they can instantly kill Samus if they catch her and you're not quick enough with the counter. From a design standpoint, they're not that scary. In practice, they are an effective threat, and throw in the fact you have to go through the areas where they stalk around in order to continue the game, it forces you to avoid them until you're actually ready to take them out. And that's good horror game design in my opinion. So, with all that said, monsters are an interesting concept to talk about and discuss, especially when it comes to the medium they're in, and don't get me wrong, I still stand by my own system of die.
Missing a letter there, boss.
Fine, my own system of die-et. But much like how what can scare a person can be subjective, what makes a good monster and what makes a bad one is going to be different for everyone. And that's great. It makes every kind of creation of horror to be unique in its own way, giving it its own flavor and allowing people to have their own unique experiences by taking it in. Sure, I may not like a lot of decisions and some monster choices in the modern day. I made that pretty clear a few years back with the problem with modern day horror games. But this isn't to say there aren't good horror games, monsters, movies, what have you out there. It's all a matter of perspective, really. I'm sure there are plenty of people who like the RE3 remake Nemesis. I will never understand why those people like that version of that monster, but that doesn't mean that I won't respect their opinion on the matter. But let me ask you guys, what makes a great monster for you? What are your qualifications, and what monster in fiction, regardless of genre or media, fits this for you? Let me know in the comments below, my friends. Leave a like, and if you're so welcomed, please hype up the video if you're on mobile. It helps the channel out greatly. I'm Uncommon, and have a spooky night, my friends.